Mystery of the Mazzaroth, Prophecy in the Constellations by Tim Warner. A study of the history and true meaning of the zodiac is probably one of the last things a Christian, or Nazarene, would want to do. The zodiac is used in the occult arts, astrology, and fortune-telling. Such practices are forbidden in the Bible, largely because they involve demonic spirits. Acts 16:16-19. Leviticus 20, verse 27. Yet the zodiac was not originally designed for such nefarious purposes. In his response to Job, Yahuwah attributed the zodiac to himself. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Job 38:31-33. The answer was obvious. Job could not do these things, but Yahuwah does, or Elohim does. The mysterious Mazzaroth mentioned in Job literally means the 12 signs of the zodiac. God, or Yahuwah, or Elohim, claimed to bring out each of the 12 signs of the zodiac throughout the year in their proper months. It is hard to imagine Yahuwah taking credit for something that originated in the minds of pagans. The Bible says that Yahuwah is the one who named the stars. He counts the numbers of the stars. He calls them all by name. Great is our Yahuwah, and mighty in power. His understanding is infinite. Or Elohim. Great is our Elohim. Psalm 147, 4-5. And that definition of Mazzaroth is from Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew Lexicon. When Yahuwah created the heavens, one of his stated purposes was to communicate to man through signs. Signs transcend language, culture, and generations. Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. Genesis 1:14. The Hebrew word translated signs is repeatedly used in Scripture to refer to symbols that represent a very specific message. The same word rendered token in reference to the rainbow as a sign of Yahuwah's covenant with Noah. Genesis 9 verse 12 and 13 and 17. It was used of circumcision, the symbol of the covenant Yahuwah made with Abraham, or Elohim. Genesis 17 and 11. The blood on the doorposts of the Israelites' houses on the first Passover was a sign that the inhabitants belonged to Yahuwah. The Sabbaths and festivals were signs, each with a deep symbolic message. Joshua used the same word when he commanded the Israelites to erect a monument of stones after Yahuwah opened the Jordan River for them to cross. That this may be a sign among you when your children ask in time to come, saying, "What do these stones mean to you?" Then you shall answer them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah, when it crossed over the Jordan. The waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial to the children forever. Joshua 4, 5-7. As we see throughout Scripture and biblical history, every sign has its corresponding meaning or message. That Yahuwah called the The Yahuwah created the constellations for signs meanings they each have a symbolic meaning. Together they proclaim a very specific message which originated with Yahuwah himself, or Elohim. The King David was aware of a specific divine message broadcast to all mankind from the heavens. Psalm 19, 1-6. The heavens are proclaiming the esteem of El, and the expanse is declaring the work of his hand. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, and there are no words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set up a tent for the sun, and it is like a bridegroom coming out of his room. It rejoices like a strong man to run the path. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end, and naught is hidden from its heat. Yahuwah's awesome power, his infinite knowledge, and his stunning creativity, or Elohim, his stunning creativity can be seen in the diversity of life all around us, and in the complexity and beauty of the systems within our world that support. Yet in this brief psalm, David made no mention of living things or the beauty of creation close at hand. These lyrics gushed forth from our heart, pondering the magnificence of the heavens. To David, nothing compared to what he observed in the sky. No doubt, as a boy tending sheep, David spent many nights in the fields gazing up at the starry host slowly marching across the expanse from east to west in perfect order. Yet, contrary to what we might expect from a shepherd warrior king, David's song does not merely reveal wonder and amazement at the grandeur and enormity of the heavens, or the military precision of its moving bodies. David's lyrics portray something that has eluded the average stargazer, even the Christian or Nazarene stargazer. David was in awe of a very specific message from the Creator that was continually broadcast across the heavens to all people of all languages. Night after night, month after month, year after year, the heavens are alive with a magnificent and intelligent proclamation. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. As with any language, there must be a common frame of reference between the speaker and the hearer. This is normally done with a common alphabet, vocabulary, and rules of grammar. All ancient writing began as pictographs. Egyptian hieroglyphs are a good example of pictograph writing. All letters of ancient alphabets began as simple drawings. The earliest form of written communication was a sequence of pictures, similar to stick figures. To the ancients, a very simple picture had a precise meaning as any word in our modern dictionaries. By arranging these simple drawings in a specific sequence, a message was communicated. The 12 signs of the zodiac are a sequence of 12 pictures: a woman, a pair of scales, a scorpion, an archer, a goatfish, a man holding a cauldron, 2 fish, a lamb, an an ox, twin boys, a crab, and a lion. These 12 stick figures march across the sky from east to west, taking a whole year to complete one cycle. Each month the sun moves from one to the next, clothing it with light during the day, completely obscuring the stars of that sign for a month by illuminating our atmosphere. The lyrics of Psalm 19 strongly imply that David understood the zodiac. The word zodiac comes from the Greek living and circle. The circle of 12 constellations through which the sun passes each year. Those not familiar with basic astronomy might miss the clear connection between the constellations and the sun's dwelling in them. The heavens, quote, and the firmament, quote, are the fixed canvas on which the Creator has painted his masterpiece. The word, quote, heavens refers to the expanse of space through which the sun, moon, and planets run their course. The firmament means something that is fixed or firm. The visible things in the heavens that do not appear to move in relation to each other, the constellations. Yet David spoke specifically of the sun's path through the circuit of the 12 constellations of the zodiac, known as the ecliptic. The ecliptic is defined by Webster as the great circle of the celestial sphere, propaganda, maybe, which is the apparent path of the sun and among the stars, or that of this earth as seen from the sun. The plane of the earth's orbit extended to meet the celestial sphere. Plane. He spoke of the sun's dwelling in a chamber or tabernacle within the constellations. In them, the heavens and the firmament, he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices like a strong man to run its race. Its rising is from one end of heaven, and its circuit to the other end. Job 9 verse 9. Some might suppose that 14. No, that's not Job 9 verse 9. Some might suppose that David was merely observing the rising and setting of the sun, with the sun being hidden in a chamber at night. Yet the Hebrew word rendered chamber is the same word used previously in Job in reference to the zodiac. He made the Bear, Lion, and the Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. Job 9 verse 9. That the 12 constellations of the zodiac are considered chambers, tabernacles, or houses for the sun is well known from ancient times. The same language is used in modern astrology. Job called the zodiacal constellations chambers of the south because he lived in the northern latitudes above the Tropic of Cancer. The sun was never directly overhead in its apparent path through the constellations. The sun's arc across the sky was always tilted toward the south. David used the language of contemporary astronomy when he spoke of the sun's dwelling in each of the 12 chambers or tabernacles or houses of the zodiac in its yearly circuit through the heavens. The sequence in which the 12 figures marched across the night sky and the sun's movement from one chamber to the next were critical to understanding the message that David saw in the heavens. The sun's path in servicing each of the 12 signs indicates the direct direction in which they must be read. If each night David laid on his back with his feet to the south and head to the north, the 12 figures would slowly move across the night sky from left to right, meaning they would be read from right to left, as the Hebrew language, the ancient Canaanite Sumerian language. Also, since the sun services the 12 zodiac constellations, one per month, in the same order, there can be no doubt about the sequence. The Apostle Paul defined the message David said was proclaimed by the constellations. He quoted this very psalm, naming the message which the heavens proclaim. This message contains the gospel of Yahushua, Messiah. Psalm 19, 1-4, LXX. The heavens declare the glory of The heavens are proclaiming the esteem of El, and the expanses declaring the work of his hand. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech. There is no speech, and there are no words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent for the sun. That's the Scriptures 2009. Romans 10:16-18. Paul wrote, "However, not all obeyed the good news, for Yahusha says, Yahuwah who has believed our report. So then, belief comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of Elohim. But I ask, did they not hear? Yes, indeed. Their voices went out to all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world." David said a message was proclaimed by the sun's path through the constellations. Paul quoted David's psalms as proof that the ancient nations had already heard the gospel. Therefore, the content of the message described by David included the gospel of Yahushua, Messiah. In Romans 10, Paul applied David's psalm about the message in the sky to the gospel. In the first chapter he said Elohim, or Yahuwah, had actively made himself known to mankind. Actually, yeah, Yahuwah. Yet his message was corrupted by demons masquerading as gods, and became the source of pagan mythologies, idolatry, and ultimately astrology. This corruption is the reason most Christians, or Nazarene, have shied away from contemplating the knowledge, power, and utterly amazing wisdom Yahuwah has demonstrated by foretelling his plan for mankind in the constellations. Romans 1:18-25. For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from heaven against all wickedness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known of Elohim is manifest among them, for Elohim has manifested it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible qualities have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, both his everlasting power and mightiness, for them to be without excuse. Because although they knew Elohim, they did not esteem him as Elohim, nor gave thanks, but became vain in their reasonings, and their understanding and their undiscerning heart was darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and changed the esteem of the incorruptible Elohim into the likeness of an image of corruptible man, and of birds, and of four-footed beasts, and of reptiles. Therefore Elohim gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to disrespect their bodies among themselves, who changed the truth of Elohim into the falsehood, and worshipped and served what was created rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. It is a fact that many of the pagan idols were representations of the constellations. Paul did not view paganism as springing from multiple remote sources, but as the corruption and intentional degradation of a single divine revelation of Yahuwah given to ancient man. Yahuwah took the initiative to show the ancients the truth about himself. The revelation of Yahuwah was seen since the creation of the world through willful ignorance. Through willful ignorance, Yahuwah's ancient revelation was perverted, driven by human lust. Divine knowledge was corrupted as men became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. The true knowledge of Yahuwah Elohim was changed, becoming the source of pagan mythologies and carved images that represented them. The pagan myths, including those related to the zodiac, are corruptions of the original message given by Yahuwah himself to ancient man through the language of pictures. Paul was an educated man, not only in the Jewish religion but also in contemporary Greek thought. In his address to the philosophers at Athens, he seized on a thread of truth that still remained within the fabric of Greek pagan culture, citing from memory the Greek poet Aratus from his book on the constellations, Phenomena, Acts 17:26-29. And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on the face of all. And he has made from one blood of every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, having ordained beforehand the times and the boundaries of their dwelling, to seek the Master, if at least they would reach out for him and find him. Though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and are, and also some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. Now then, since we are the offspring of Elohim, we should not think that the Elohim is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by the skill and thought of man. In the very paragraph Paul quoted, Aratus attributed the design of the zodiac to the supreme Yahuwah, attributed the zodiac attributed the design of the zodiac to the supreme God. Whom the Greeks called Zeus. Below is the opening paragraph from Aratus Phenomena. Paul's quotation is underlined. From Zeus let us begin. Him do we mortals never leave unnamed. Full of Zeus are all the streets and all the marketplaces of men. Full is the sea and the heavens thereof. Always we all have need of Zeus. Underline. For we are also his offspring. And he in his kindness unto men giveth favourable signs and wakeneth the people to work, reminding them of livelihood. He tells what time the soil is best for the labour of the ox and for the mattock, and what time the seasons are favourable both for the planting of trees and for casting all manner of seeds. For himself it was who set the signs in heaven and marked out the constellations, and for the year devised what stars chiefly should give to men right signs of the seasons, till the end of all things might grow unfailingly. Wherefore him do men ever worship first and last. Hail, O Father, mighty marvel, mighty blessings unto men. Hail to thee and to the elder race. Hail ye muses, right kindly every one. But for me too, in answer to my prayer, direct all my lay, even as it is meet to tell the stars. test, test, test. 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 Paul did not seem to mind the implied connection between Zeus and the Yahuwah or Elohim of Israel. His discourse continues with a claim that an image he observed in Athens dedicated to the unknown God represented the God he preached, or the Elohim he preached. Without question, Paul viewed the pagan religions of Athens as corruptions of the true ancient religion. Zeus was simply a corruption of the true Yahuwah, the creator of heaven and earth. Paul recognized that even within their corrupt paganism there remained smoking cinders of Yahuwah's original message that had not been entirely snuffed out. Paul used these dying embers to kindle the flame of the gospel of Yahushua Messiah in their midst. Chapter 1. Interpretations of the Zodiac. Aratus, whom Paul quoted, attributed the zodiac to Zeus, the supreme god of the Greeks. The ancient Jewish historian Josephus, writing around the time of Christ, or Messiah, wrote that ancient astronomy was a divine art and was handed down by the sons of Seth. Now this Seth, when he was brought up and came to those years in which he could discern what was good, became a virtuous man, and as he was himself of an excellent character, so did he leave the children behind him who imitated his virtues. All these proved to be of good dispositions. They also inhabited the same country without dissensions, and in a happy condition without any misfortunes falling upon them till they died. In bold. They also were the inventors of that peculiar sort of wisdom which is concerned with the heavenly bodies and their order, and that their inventions might not be lost forever, they were sufficiently known, and that their inventions might not be lost before they were sufficiently known, upon Adam's prediction that the world was to be destroyed at one time by the force of fire, and at another time by the violence and quantity of water. They made 2 pillars, the one of brick and the other of stone. They inscribed their discoveries on them both, that in case the pillar of brick should be destroyed by the flood, the pillar of stone might remain, and exhibit those discoveries to mankind, and also informed them that there was another pillar of brick erected by them. Now this remains in the land of Syriadad to this day. Syriadad to this day. Josephus, Antiquities, Book 1, Chapter 2-3. Since one tribe of righteous men cooperated in this particular discipline and worked together to build monuments to preserve their knowledge of the heavens, they must have considered to be virtually important. They must have considered to be vitally important. Josephus linked the Sethites' knowledge of astronomy with their knowledge of divine prophecy. They built monuments to preserve their celestial knowledge because of the prophecy of 2 future judgments, the flood and the judgment of fire. Peter linked these together as well in a passage that strongly hints at the very same tradition mentioned by Josephus. 2 Peter 3, 5-7. For they chose to have this hidden from them, that the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of water and in the water, by the word of Elohim, footnote Hebrews 11:3, through which the world at that time was destroyed, being flooded with water, and the present heavens and the earth are treasured up by the same word, being kept for fire, to a day of judgment and destruction of wicked men. Some of the earliest Christians also believed the zodiac was divinely given. On the symbolism of the Ark of the Covenant, Clement of Alexandria wrote that the wings of the twin 6-winged cherubim adorning the the Ark of the Covenant and the breastplate of the high priest symbolize the 12 signs of the zodiac. And these golden figures, each of them with 6 wings, signify either the 2 bears, as some will have it, or rather the 2 hemispheres. And the name cherubim meant much knowledge, but both together have 12 wings, and by the zodiac and time, which moves on it, point out the world of sense. The 12 stones set in 4 rows on the breast describe for us the circle of the zodiac in the 4 changes of the year. Clement of Alexandria, Stromata, Book 5, B.I. Book 5, Chapter 6. Hippolytus, disciple of Irenaeus, while strongly condemning the use of astrology to predict the future or discern one's fate, implied that the pagans have perverted the true and original meaning of the 12 signs of the zodiac. But in each zodiacal sign they call limits of the stars those in which each of the stars, from any one quarter to another, can exert the greatest amount of influence, in regard of which there is among them, according to their writings, no mere casual divergency of opinion. Employing these as analogies, Euphrates the Priamac, Paratic, and Acabis the Caristinian, and the rest of the crowd of these speculators, imposing names different from the doctrine of the truth, speak of a sedition of aeons and of a revolt of good powers over to evil ones, and of the concord of good with wicked aeons, calling them Taparchiae and Proastioi, and very many other names. But the entire of this heresy, as attempted by them, I shall explain and refute when we come to treat the subject of these aeons. But now, lest anyone suppose the opinions propounded by the Chaldeans respecting astrological doctrine to be trustworthy and secure, we shall not hesitate to furnish a brief refutation respecting these, establishing that the futile art, astrology, is calculated both to deceive and blind the soul, indulging in vain expectations rather than to profit it. And we urge our case with these, not according to any experience of the art, but from knowledge based on practical principles. Those who have cultivated the art, becoming disciples of the Chaldeans and communicating mysteries as if strange and astonishing to men, having changed the names merely, have from this source concocted their heresy. Hippolytus, Refutation of All Heresies, Book 4, II, or 2. Hippolytus indicated that the ancients' naming of the constellations and connecting the stars in the forms of various figures was never intended for the purpose of astrology, their influences over human fate, but rather as mnemonic devices. But I am rather Hippolytus, Refutation of All Heresies, Book 5, VI, or Book IV, Book 4, number 6. But I am rather of opinion that the ancients imposed the names of received animals upon certain stars, upon certain specified stars, for the purpose of knowing them better, not from any similarity of nature. For what have the 7 stars distant from one another in common with a bear, or the 12 stars with the head of a dragon? For comparing the forms and dispositions of men with names of stars, how impotent their system is. For we know that those originally conversant with such investigations have called the stars by names given in reference to propriety of signification and facility for future recognition. Hippolytus, Refutation of All Heresies, Book IV, XXVII. An ancient Syrian Christian document asserts that the signs of the zodiac were created by Yahuwah, Elohim. It argues that, or God, created by God. It argues that man alone was given a free will in contrast to all of the heavenly bodies. Quote, but God in his benignity chose not so to make man, but by freedom he exalted him above many of his creatures, and even made him equal with the angels. For look at the sun and the moon, and the signs of the zodiac, and all the other creatures which are greater than we in some points, and see how individual freedom has been denied them, and how they are all fixed in their course by decree, so that they may do that only which is decreed for them, and nothing else. But all these are servants and are subject to one decree, for they are the instruments of the wisdom of Yahuwah, or God, which erreth not. Bardesan Ante-Nicene Fathers, Volume 8, page 724. Ancient Jewish interpretations of the zodiac. Circular zodiacs have been found in several ancient Jewish synagogues in Israel dating from the 5th century AD. They had mosaic tile floors portraying Bible stories and pictures, yet the most prominent place was reserved for a zodiac wheel with the 12 signs portrayed in picture, as well as Aramaic or Greek script. The best preserved examples are the Tzipori Synagogue, the Hamat Tiberias Synagogue, and the Beth Alpha Synagogue. The Tzipori and Hamat Tiberias zodiacs point to a date around 3200 BC by the positions of the constellations in relation to the solstices and equinoxes, 4 women at the corners representing the 4 seasons. The summer solstice is aligned with Leo, The fall equinox is aligned with Scorpio. The winter solstice is aligned with Aquarius, and the spring equinox is aligned with Taurus. All three synagogues have extensive Greek inscriptions. Greek-speaking Jews would naturally derive their chronologies and biblical dates from the Greek Septuagint translation of the Old Testament made about 250 BC. However, the ages of the patriarchs in their Septuagint from the flood to Abraham exceed the Hebrew dates by 880 years. Therefore, Jews using the Septuagint would date the flood 880 years too early, about 3200 BC. The Beth Alpha zodiac was intended to depict the same date, since 2 of the 4 are aligned the same as the other Jewish zodiacs. However, it was poorly and unevenly constructed, making it internally inconsistent. It is striking that all of these circular zodiacs, including the Egyptian Dendera zodiac, depict the 4 seasons as 4 women. Virgo, the only woman in the zodiac. And all 4 indicate the time of the flood when the 4 beasts seasons first began. Genesis 8:22. The Dendera zodiac is based on Egyptian tradition that is independent of the Hebrew Torah, but agrees with it exactly regarding the date of the flood. The synagogue zodiacs are off by 880 years because of their dependence on the Septuagint. The Jews either allegorized the signs or identified them with the 12 tribes of Israel. Rabbinic authorities rationalized the zodiac inclusion into prayer books by allegorizing the signs in terms of Jewish history. Besikta Rabbati 27-28. It's from Ellen Frankel and Betsy Platkin Tuch. The Encyclopedia of Jewish Symbols. However, the standards of the 12 tribes correspond to the signs of the zodiac. Thus in the east were stationed Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, corresponding to Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. Reuben, Simon, and Gad in the south correspond to Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin in the west with Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. And Dan, Asher, and Naphtali in the north with Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. In the Besikta Rabbati 27-28 edition, Friedman, page 133b, a passage occurs which explains the names of the signs homiletically in accordance with the Jewish history. The temple could not be destroyed in Nisan, since the ram which it represents in the zodiac is a reminder of the Akedah. Taurus is connected with the calf which Abraham slaughtered for his angelic guest. Genesis 18:7. The Gemini represent Jacob and Esau, while the temple was destroyed in the month of Av. Since its zodiacal sign, Aria, the lion, corresponds to Ariel, the name given to the temple, Isaiah 29, verse 1. The Encyclopedia Judaica, Keter Publishing House, Jerusalem Limited, 1972, volume XVI, pages 1091 to 1191 to 1192. As the above quotation shows, the Jewish interpretation sometimes linked the 12 signs with Jewish history, but there was no specific order or meaning attached to the sun's sequential stay in each of the 12 houses of the zodiac. Something critically important to the message David saw in the constellations. The Jewish interpretation relegated the zodiac to a kind of picture appendix to Israel's history in the Torah. Yet in this view, the constellations could tell no discernible story at all prior to or independent of the Torah. They were simply a grouping of random pictures. Just like the pagan mythological interpretations of the zodiac signs, the complete lack of meaning to the sequence of the zodiac signs makes the Jewish interpretation doubtful and highly subjective. Recent Christian interpretations. Many have recognized similarities between the symbols in the Bible and the zodiac constellations, too many to be mere coincidence. The scriptures which attribute the signs of the zodiac to Yahuwah, or God, Yahuwah, cannot be brushed aside. If Yahuwah created them, named them, and used them as mnemonic devices to foretell his plan for the ages, their meaning ought to be discernible, particularly when we compare them to the symbols used in the Bible. The first Christian, or Nazarene, attempt in fairly modern times to decipher the meaning. The first Christian attempt in fairly modern times to decipher the meaning of the zodiac symbols was made by Frances Rolleston, an expert in Semitic languages. She published her book Mazzaroth, or the Constellations, in London in 1862. Rolleston attempted to connect virtually all of the constellations with some aspect of the work of Yahushua Messiah in redemption. For example, Virgo was said to represent his virgin birth. Libra, the scales, represented the price the Savior paid for sin. Scorpio, the scorpion, represented the sting of death which the Savior endured, etc. Rolleston justified these connections by tracing the phonetic sounds of some Arabic star names back to supposed Hebrew root names. Back to supposed Hebrew root words. Yet this process fails to consider that the Arabic names were fairly modern, from the Middle Ages, and largely reflect the position within the particular zodiac sign in the Arabic language. For example, Denabola in the constellation Leo simply means tail of the lion in Arabic. Ras al-Asad in Leo simply means forehead of the lion in Arabic. Instead of using the Arabic meanings, which were clearly meant to refer to that particular animal or sign, Rolleston attempted to redefine these words based on their similarity to Hebrew words in phonetic sound. The entire process was very subjective, picking and choosing star names and choosing similar sounding Hebrew words with which to link them. Such a process is extremely problematic since ancient Hebrew writing did not contain vowels. Thus, the exact pronunciation is not known for many ancient Hebrew words. Thus, this allowed Rolliston the flexibility to add any vowel sounds she chose in order to make these supposed connections. She assumed that the Arabic names selected were transliterations of ancient Hebrew words rather than originating in Arabic. Yet the fact that the Arabic names make perfect sense in Arabic relating to the constellations in which they appear makes Rolliston's work in this regard highly suspect. Rolliston's approach also made many constellations apply to Yahusha Messiah, which did not exist in the most ancient star catalogues, but were added later by the Greeks or Romans. Interpreting these constellations as referring to Yahusha Messiah using the same process, similarity in phonetic sound of Arabic star names to certain Hebrew words, makes the whole process appear subjective and forced. Since many of these constellations were identified rather late, how can they be connected to a single uniform prophecy given from the beginning? Rolliston's book attracted little attention until it was discovered by Joseph Sieyès, an American Lutheran minister in Philadelphia. Sieyès was a dispensationalist and heavily involved in pyramidology. Many early dispensationalists were fascinated with the Great Pyramid of Giza, thinking that its internal measurements pictured dispensationalism's the unique series of, quote, dispensations. They believed the time of the alleged pre-tribulation rapture and the second coming They believed the time of the alleged pre-tribulation rapture and the second coming of Yahusha could be discerned from the precise lengths of the various corridors and chambers within the Great Pyramid. See Clarence Larkin's Dispensational Truth, God's Plan and Purpose in the Ages for a good example of dispensational pyramidology. Sieyès condensed Rolliston's work, publishing it as his own under the title The Gospel in the Stars. He contributed very little to Rolliston's original work except presenting it in a more readable format. Not to be outdone, E.W. Bullinger, another staunch dispensationalist and contemporary of Sieyès, published his own rehashing of Rolliston's work as The Witness of the Stars. As with Sieyès, Bullinger added nothing of significance or originality to what Rolliston had produced. In more recent times, Rolliston's work has been repackaged by another dispensationalist, Chuck Missler, again, with nothing of substance added to her work. Presbyterian minister D. James Kennedy also offered his own abridged knockoff of Rolliston's work. He was not a dispensationalist, but held to Reformed theology, which essentially holds that God is, or Yahuwah is completely finished with Israel. Thus, like dispensationalists, the zodiac signs were all forced to represent New Testament concepts exclusively. The jurists interpreted the zodiac signs apart from any New Testament connection or reference to Yahusha Messiah. Dispensationalists, since they hold to a radical dichotomy between Israel and the Church, interpreted the signs without regard for the Old Testament history of Israel. Both groups largely ignored the sequence of the signs, leaving them with random pictures. More recently, apologetics and creation ministries have debunked the work of Frances Rolleston, and with it all of the other books based on her work, showing it as non-scientific and subjective, and rightly so. That's from answersingenesis.org. These works have been convincing for many Christians or Nazarene who do not perceive the deficiencies underlying Rolleston's approach. Yet, like the Bible code, quote, phenomenon, they fall short of persuading an honest skeptic. The true message in the heavens. The basic premise of the former Christian works on the zodiac was undoubtedly correct, that the God or Yahuwah designed the zodiac to convey a message to humanity. The Bible states this plainly, but previous authors have apparently read into the Constellations their own theological biases. These works either ignore Israel's role in Yahuwah's or God's redemptive plan, a reformed theological bias, or isolate Israel from God's plan, Yahuwah's plan for His church, a dispensational bias. All of these works completely ignore the most fundamental aspect of any prophetic message in symbols, that the sequence of the symbols tells a single story. A story requires a logical sequence to be read. Unless there is meaning to the order of the zodiac signs, David's observation cannot be correct. Without this order, the zodiac could not be read objectively by people of every language. It would simply be a grouping of random pictures open to any subjective interpretation. The real story told by the zodiac deals with God's or Yahuwah's plan to restore His creation from His first divine act of restoration. The real story told by the zodiac deals with Yahuwah's or God's plan to restore His creation from His first divine act of restoration, the call of Abraham, until the consummation of Messiah's coming. His creation. The real story told by the zodiac deals with Yahuwah's plan to restore His creation from His first divine act of restoration, the call of Abraham, until the consummation of Messiah's coming reign upon the earth. It is one story, not two, and it contains the message of both the Old and New Testaments in a unified whole. If the zodiac is prophecy, and if Israel's history is the conduit through which Yahuwah has chosen to accomplish His ultimate goal, we would expect the zodiac to portray Jewish history sequentially from beginning to end. One major failure of the Jewish interpretation was the omission of Yahusha and His work of redemption found in the New Testament. Previous Christian interpretations have made the opposite mistake, omitting Israel's historical role in the Old Testament from Yahuwah's plan of redemption. The message is more than just the death and resurrection of Messiah, or Christ. The gospel of the kingdom begins with the call of Abraham and ends with the coming of Christ's kingdom, Messiah's kingdom. Galatians 3 verse 8. By comparing the zodiac signs to the history and prophecy of the Bible, it is evident that the zodiac tells the same story as the Bible in exactly the same sequence. It is the story of Yahuwah's redemption of his creation using the nation of Israel as a conduit. It begins with the Abrahamic covenant and takes us through all the major events in Jewish history recorded in the Old Testament. It then describes the story contained in the New Testament and concludes with Messiah's future reign upon the earth. This story is told in the following sequence. Old Testament: Virgo, the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis; Libra, the Mosaic covenant, Exodus to Leviticus; Scorpio, Yahuwah's rejection of Israel, Numbers to Deuteronomy; Sagittarius, the Promised Land, Joshua to Judges; Capricorn, the Davidic covenant, Samuel to Chronicles; Aquarius, the Babylonian exile, Isaiah to Daniel; Pisces, the return from exile, Ezra to Nehemiah and Haggai to Malachi. New Testament: Aries, the Lamb of the New Covenant, Matthew to John; Taurus, the Apostolic Mission, Acts; Gemini, Gentiles united with Israel, Romans to Jude; Cancer, the Great Tribulation, Revelation 1 to 19; Leo, Messiah's Kingdom, Revelation 20 to 22. Biblical prophecy uses the same pictorial language and symbols found in the zodiac. For example, Revelation 5 to 6, or 5 to 6a. And one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Yehuda, the root of David, overcame to open the scroll and to loosen its 7 seals." Footnotes: Genesis 49 9 to 10, Hebrews 7:14, Isaiah 11 to 1, Isaiah 11:1, and Isaiah 11:10. And I looked and saw in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, a lamb standing, as having been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, and which are the 7 spirits of Elohim sent out into all the earth. The Lamb is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. From this passage we learn that Aries, the Lamb, the new covenant sacrifice, is also Leo, the Lion, the king who will reign upon the throne of David. That the Bible uses the same pictorial language as the ancient constellations is significant evidence that the words of the prophets come from the same source as the signs of the zodiac. Since the signs foretell the same events in the same sequence as the Bible, using the same symbols, a common source is strongly implied. The parallels between the zodiac and the Bible provide significant circumstantial evidence that both sprang from the same source, or that one borrows significantly from the other. The question that must be resolved, however, is whether the Bible borrows from pagan sources, as is frequently charged by skeptics and atheists, or whether paganism is a corruption of ancient prophecy contained in the constellations from the same Yahuwah who gave us the Bible, as was claimed by the Apostle Paul. The answer to this question has staggering consequences. Christians and Nazarene need only to show that both the zodiac and the Bible tell the same story in the same sequence, and that the prophecy contained in both the supernatural and that the prophecy contained in both is supernatural in nature. The supernatural quality of accurate predictive prophecy requires a divine source. The story of human history was known and recorded in advance in the pictures of the zodiac as well as the sayings of the Hebrew prophets. No amount of human divination could tell the story of Israel in advance. Some have tried to counterfeit predictive prophecy, but their prophecies have either failed totally or been so vague that they are virtually self-fulfilling. Who but the Creator could write human history in advance across the vastness of the heavens? Who but the Creator could accurately reveal history in advance through a series of prophets? Only the Creator of heaven and earth, who is himself guiding history, can do such things. The message of the zodiac and the prophets is supernatural. It identifies the Creator as the Yahuwah who revealed himself to Abraham, or the Elohim, as the Elohim or Yahuwah who revealed himself to Abraham and through the Hebrew prophets. The zodiac identifies Yahushua Messiah as the Messiah of Israel because it does not end with the Old Testament. It contains the New Testament story as well. Yahuwah does not ask that anyone believe and obey him based upon blind faith. He has revealed himself clearly for anyone who is truly seeking him with a sincere and pure heart. History and the heavens are his witness, and he has laid out history and the heavens are his witness. He has laid out the story of the entire Bible in sequential pictures across the heavens before any of it was history. If this does not impress the skeptic, nothing will. What Yahuwah has done ought to inspire in the Christian or Nazarene a deep love for stargazing and a desire to learn how to identify the constellations in the night sky. Once learned, this ancient form of communication can be used to pass on the knowledge of Yahuwah to the next generation. Just as the sons of Seth did with their children. There is no greater gift one can give his children than knowledge of Yahuwah through his revelation, including the Mazzaroth, Yahuwah's prophecy in the Constellations.